This is a modified question, and I do want to hit a couple of these before we run out of time and try to get some bullet questions with bullet answers. But millennials, uh, statistically speaking, are more intellectual than the generation before. They're more educated. They're even more affluent. I mean, that's a statistic. That's not an evaluation of the current panel. But that kind of an idea is so they've got the intellectual chops to deal with these things. They're not an ignorant group or generation of people, even if we may feel that they act that way. But on the one hand, they'll listen to a Mark Driscoll, and he does have a degree, even though there's depth and all. There's a mega church mentality. He's published. He's well spoken. He's got, On the other hand, is Shane Claiborne, who is the Rastafarian. Let's sell everything we have. We all should wear sandals because Jesus wore sandals. So did everybody else. But that was, that. And then we have this whole influx of technology, which is almost the child is born and an iPod is put into their hands. Who are they really listening to? And I say that from the standpoint of us as the church trying to shape not our doctrine, but our church culture to be, and Dale and Jeff talked about first impressions. We really want to put our best foot forward. We believe that what we have is the truth because it is. We believe in Jesus. There are many that are conscientious. How can we not slam the door before we've ever had a chance to talk to Jesus?
They're listening to their friends. I mean, these names get thrown out there. I mean, these guys mentioned Mark Driscoll's preaching. I still think the fact that they have these punk rock bands is probably another reason why in Seattle it's going well for them to have. It's still I think there's.
No, he's the cussing pastor. We all start cussing.
Yeah. I don't want to go over the top and say that he's the example of a guy that he preached for an hour and then they love it. I think there's an experience there going on that they're going for. I guess maybe I think a little less of some of our generation than these guys do. But I think there's an experience aspect.
He's from Music.
But I still think
he's from Music City. He's towing the family line.
I still think there is a cult of personality. So you get this kind of rebellious personality, and you kind of want to follow behind that. But I still think it's friends. I think that's always people closest to you are the ones that really have the most influence on you spiritually. And you might go listen to this guy out here, but I think it's still your friends that have the closest.
Okay, so is there a chance? And at the risk of over stereotyping either my generation or the next generation, where does I said blonde-haired earlier and somebody corrected me, where's the graying-haired, blue-eyed, white suburbanite with no tattoos or piercing, where's his chance to connect with the millennial? Or is there? Do we need to start raising up a generation?
I would say make a friend, because one of the things you'll see when you study...
That's not going to happen easy on my part.
When you study millennials, we might be intellectual, but we're emotionally not very... I mean, there's this extended adolescence, they say, and used to stop at 18, now it's 28, 33 before you really mature. And one of the things they're looking for is mentors. They want somebody to help them navigate life. And so all of a sudden, these older people, and you can put whatever age you want to. I was going to throw an age out there, but it might offend some folks. Sometimes these older folks, if they would just step up and say, I'm going to help this person navigate life, then I think that's a connection there. I teach a 20s and 30s class at Woodson. One of the things they always are asking is, can we get these older members, and not like, the 80-year-olds, can we get the next group up, the 40s and 50s, to come to our class so we can ask them questions like, what do you do when you have 2 kids and it seems it's putting a stress on your marriage? Or how did you navigate career stuff? They're looking for somebody to help them. And so there's a place for some of the folks who are older to step in and say, that neighbor next to me, I can give up a friendship. And although we're at different levels, you become a mentor, and all of a sudden you have an opportunity then to speak to maybe even more important things.
Okay, let me do it by a yes or no. Number one way to reach the millennial cliff is through relationships, yes or no?
I'd say yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me rephrase the question so that you'll answer it the way I want you to, because I thought it was correspondence courses. But so relationships, and we're talking one-on-one relationships, right? I mean, for the most part, they're looking for a sense of community, and certainly we as the church have a sense of community. But we really need to start with here's the guy I know, here's the lady that I work with, here's that kind of. I mean, I've talked about that in evangelism for longer than when I was all the way back when I was a millennial.
This big scary person out there, it's your neighbor, and just learn to be neighborly and friendly. And next thing you know, you maybe have a chance to speak something more important to them. I think we can categorize all these different generations. But let's just be honest. Anybody wants to have a friend, and that friend can speak to them important truth.
Tyler.
For you had listed somebody at the very beginning. You were kind of joking about the suburbanite white individual. How are you going to befriend that person? And in my mind, especially with friends that I knew from school, myself included, if someone, if you're a preacher or if you are real, if you're genuine and you really mean what you preach, you really mean what you're doing, there's a shot there. There's a chance in befriending that person. I can't tell you how many times people I've gone to school with, people who I never thought that they would listen to or be interested in, they did because they believed that that person believed in what they were doing. But the problem is if you're not, and if you judge them in a way that is inconsistent with the Bible, or you do so before you really even know that person, you're not going to have a shot in doing so. You have to be open to listen.
Say somebody faked in here. Okay, do not say that.
If you go to your home congregation, ask the people why they, especially if you have more than one church in your town, go and ask why do they go to the church they go to, and they're going to tell you most likely it's family, or it's friends. It's not some guy had this great some preacher had the perfect sermon. It was family or a friend that opened the door and that led anything else.
Yeah, and I think if you want to dovetail the two together, deep, practical, life-changing sermons. Is this thing on? Yes. Mm-hmm. That sustains them and keeps them there. But they don't ever get there without that relationship. That relationship is the doorway that gets them there. And I view my role as a preacher is to now they've brought them, they've got them to this point. They want something, I better deliver. I better give them something that's biblical, that's life-changing, that's going to apply, that's relevant to their life. But it all starts, as Wesley said, with that relationship. And if you don't have that relationship,
if they show up and
then
you
let
don't
me
do
take
it,
let me take it.
Well,
you've lied to your members.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you told them bring them here, and they're going to they're going to learn Jesus and how to live it out. And so if they do get here, and we're not giving them message of depth, and we've kind of I think we lose trust in our membership. Well, we brought a friend here, and that it just didn't.
Okay, let's take the other side of the coin. Because there's at least 2 books out within the quote unquote brotherhood about why I have left the church. If relationships are what are going to bring the millennials, at least we'll get their attention, whether or not they answer or not. Is that the reason ultimately that they're leaving? I mean, I read the full gambit, and I can lump some of it into some category. But if you had to say that relationship is ultimately what they're not finding in the church is why they're leaving? Because we have the idea that relationships will bring them in, but they're leaving because they want entertainment. They're leaving because they want superficiality. They're leaving because of, would you say that the same is true?
Well,
I mean,
I haven't read any of the book, but
Cliff hasn't
I
read a
haven't
book
either.
yet.
So
I got you a
Those are those things
coloring
that-
book version you're going to love.
but, I mean,
Cliff has never
it's
read a book.
different.
That's what he just said.
Those of them that have left the church or are already in the church, they have the friendships usually in the family. But what I think causes people to leave is dishonesty and hypocrisy. Is what I think is what makes people leave. They see an inconsistency in what's being taught and what's being lived. They're maybe seeing people not handle Scripture in an honest way, which causes them to then rebel. Or they just don't see people who genuinely live like they claim to live, and it causes them to quit.
Hey, Tyler?
I just wanted to say, and I agree completely with what Cliff had said. At the same time, we just said a second ago that they're not idiots per se.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I guess I just wanted to add to that with that, the desire for a relationship is not a bad thing. It's something that's real. God wants a relationship with us, and we want a relationship with God, and we desire a relationship with others. We value family and friends and close ones, and that's a good thing. And like you said, that can backfire in any relationship. If God wasn't faithful, if God wasn't trustworthy, and we saw that, we would back away from that. But He is, and in that, like I said, it is that it's the hypocrisy. It's the inconsistencies that individuals are going to see. That's going to drive them away. That's why I keep saying, like I said, I'm not a student of this. I'm learning all this stuff like as these guys are saying these things. But at the same time, that's true. If someone's coming in and they say, look, you say that you are one thing, but we see that you are not that, I wouldn't want to go there. I wouldn't want to be a part of that.
Take 2 things. One, that's not all the church's problem. There are just people who are going to leave no matter what. So you can have a great church. I think sometimes we can say it's all the church's issue. But if we're going to get into maybe some of these issues, when you turn 18, you're out of your parents' house, you're trying to find a place to connect in the church. We give them an ability to drop out then, because before that we have youth groups and we've got these things. They have relationships, they do stuff together, and then all of a sudden they're an adult and we have nothing for them. And one of the things that you'll see is that when they come back, they're married. All of a sudden they get married and they have children, and that's when they come back to church, because now church has something to offer me. It helps me raise better children, but they don't see that 18 to 30, they're delaying marriage anyways, that time to have anything to offer. And that's scary, because think about the decisions you make from the age 18 to 30. Those are some of the most important decisions, lay the foundation for the rest of your life. And they've kind of removed themselves from the church community and are making these decisions independent to some degree of the wisdom that comes with the church and with God. So there is this a natural thing to where I don't fit in until I have kids or until I'm married and have kids. That's when I'll fit back in. So that's when they might be coming back to the church.
Just a little takeoff of what he said. I think it's always I've been speaking on this a little bit in my lessons lately. It's always a mistake to try to figure out what you want to do before you figured out who you want to be. And the teens, for the most part, my exposure was all about here's what you're supposed to do. Actually, it was more here's what you're not supposed to do. And it wasn't here's who you need to be. And if we could figure out with that group that's leaving, they're now starting to start that pathway of figuring out what they want to do. I haven't figured out what I want to do with my life. The problem is they haven't figured out who they want to be. And I don't know if we've done a very good job as a church, and probably the failure in the family, to help shape them into thinking, who do you really want to be? And if they can figure out who they want to be, they don't lose that connection as much. Because if I want to be somebody that's deep, that's spiritual, that makes an impact, and I know that I get that through the relationships at church and through those various things, I'm going to go there. I'm going to be a part of that. I want to participate in that, because that helps me to be who I want to be. And I think a lot of it's that disconnect between figuring out, helping them to see who they want to be, as opposed to just telling them what they need to do.
Okay, here's the deal. We're about out of time. I want to talk some more about technology, because it's a technological. Let me ask you, just as we go around here and to wrap it up, to finish this sentence or fill in the blank, and that is, Cliff, starting with you, that the millennialists should not be feared because
I'm one of them.
that's enough. Well, I don't. You're right. I'm not
there's
afraid
a
of
reason
you.
not to fear.
Okay, I guess you're right. Oh.
No, because I'm just saying the older generation
They
are
should
scared
not
to death of the millennial
because
they
thinkers.
are a threat. Why not?
They shouldn't be afraid of them because they are intelligent and they're thinkers. And they're honest.
Okay?
Because they have souls.
We're not as different as we think we are. I think we divide these categories, but it's the same issues. If we had a thing 50 years ago, and Wayne would be up here at the end as the young guy, he would talk about this stuff, then he'd be saying things like they want a relationship. The older generation just doesn't get what we need. The older people are stodgy, and we're kind of the new hip folks. I mean, that was the same discussion. So it's not like they're just
it was groovy.
Yeah, groovy. Sorry. Yeah. Not like there's just brand new people that grow up like aliens. We're basically the same as we've always been there.
Well, I don't know if I have much to contribute, but yeah, we're people. We're real, and we're intelligent. We're smart. Good looking. Some of them.
I knew that was going to happen.
I'm smart. I'm intelligent.
Let me just say,
Special.
we are out of time, and I appreciate. First of all, I hope that you all recognize that these guys tried their best to represent themselves from the mindset of the millennialists. It does not necessarily mean that these are the rebellious preachers of our generation. They had quite a challenge to step away from some of those things that they already know and understand, to reflect on a culture, and that hopefully we'll draw from it an opportunity. And I think that's what I see with millennials, is a great opportunity. They're looking for community. They're looking for something that's real, something that will work and has answers. And I think Jesus Christ has all of those things to offer. Thank you to all of you guys, and to all of you for staying around a little extra as well.
Keep it real, homie.